What could possibly go wrong? But this stuff is crazy. President Xi would be proud. It's not about taxes. It's about control. Do what you're told. Just do what you're told. And if you do that, we might let you eat meat occasionally.
Nancy Pelosi was asked whether she intends to include this in Democrats' $3.5 trillion partisan boondoggle the other day, and her response was yes, 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 yes.
Yes.
What do you say
Yes.
to Americans
Yes.
who are concerned
Yes.
about that?
Yes.
Well, I've consulted with so many people as I travel the highways and byways of Indiana. What I am consistently hearing is no, 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 no.
And you have to ask yourself, for what purpose? It tells you nothing about taxable income, flooded with massive, massive number of individual and small business accounts for which it'll have a dollar amount that means nothing. So how long is it going to take for them to say, well, you know, we need a little bit more information because we really can't make much of this?
Why did they start at $600? And I believe the answer to that is because they wanted to go after all of the people on Schedule C and Schedule E and collect the money from them. Then they got caught at this, and they said, well, we're not going to do that. But they haven't. All they've said in response to we're not going to do that is we'll agree to let it go up to $10,000. To answer that question, I again refer back to my data on what the average American family receives and spends in a year. It still covers virtually all of them. They just said, well, we're not going to go after anybody who makes less than $400,000. Well, the Green Book, which lays out this proposal, in addition to the details you've already heard about, says very specifically that the Secretary, meaning the Secretary of Treasury, will be given broad authority to issue regulations necessary to implement this proposal, which says that the IRS will be given broad rulemaking authority to get the data it wants. Now, the IRS, in the very thing they sent out today, trying to say, well, we aren't going to go after anybody who makes less than $400,000, also said, you know, we already have the paycheck information on folks, and we already have the interest income information on folks, but we need the rest. That's the point of all this. Why did they start out at $600? That's not to get the wealthy. That's to get everybody. It's to create a total dragnet. They haven't even put out enough details for us to give you a specific answer, but if you look at the tax code and see where it is that there is the available money that's not being reported, it's primarily in Schedule C and Schedule E. That picks up all small businesses, all individuals, everybody. And so they said, we will analyze the tax gap in Schedules C and E and tell you where it looks like the lost revenue is to be found. And when they did that, they found that it was mostly in those making less than $500,000. They are really not going to go after those who make less than $400,000, then why don't they, instead of saying, well, we'll raise the limit to $1,000 for everybody, why don't they just put a ban in there that bans the IRS from snooping in the accounts of people who make less than $400,000?
I used to collect taxes for the state of Louisiana. Of course there's a tax gap. Duh. I mean, we have a voluntary system. And when we first imposed an income tax in America, the constitutionality of it was litigated. I think our lawmakers in our judicial branch decided, well, we need to strike a balance here between people's privacy and public policy of catching people who cheat. And the way you do that is through audits. It's an extraordinarily inefficient agency. Any of you have a tax question? Go call the IRS this afternoon. See what happens. You can't even get them on the phone. Do you folks really want to live in a state where the government knows every one of the intimate details of your life, including finances? If you do, I hear China's beautiful this time of year.
One of the small business owners who was at that roundtable made a point that I think is very telling in response to your question. He said, I have a small business and I'm not a wealthy person. He didn't say what his income was, but I know it was way less than $400,000. I got the feeling it was probably less than $100,000. But he said, I got a small business. And he said, I move a lot of money through my business account. But I don't have a profit margin that moves a lot of that into my personal account. But he said, if you look at my account, my small business account, it'll have more than $1 million of transactions in and out. Changing the income limit from $600 or the trigger from $600 to $10,000. I just want to read to you what the average American runs through their account in the United States during a year. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The total is the average American runs over $61,000 through their account. By the way, the proposal doesn't include just banks and credit unions. It includes financial institutions. That'll be Venmo, PayPal, will be the biggest violation of individual privacy that I think this country has ever seen.
To the same IRS that famously discriminated against conservative organizations seeking, that very recently leaked massive amounts of completely private personal tax information. Our Democratic colleagues suggested that the opposition to this is exclusively well-paid lobbyists and multi-gazillionaires. This proposal is going to affect almost every single American.
It's a stupid idea that I hear from Iowans all the time. No motive other than to make the private lives of individuals public to the IRS.
Amazing dissatisfaction with what this proposal means to Kansans. And I used to wonder, could this be true? This is so far-fetched that this can't be the real circumstance, only to know that in Washington, D.C., in this circumstance, it is for real. A couple of financial institutions, a banker in Paola tells me it's not even law yet, and I've had customers closing their accounts.
This proposal, which would double the size of the IRS, literally double the size of the IRS. This is something that is so sweeping, we've never seen anything like it before, where you're literally talking about an IRS dragnet across the bank accounts of every single American. About 75% of the revenue raised under this proposal would be generated by people making less than $100,000 a year. Only 5 to 10% of that revenue would be paid by those making more than $500,000 a year. So in other words, the Democrats' suggestion that this proposal and the tax increases included in their plan won't hit lower-income Americans is just false.
Joe Biden wants to increase the size of the IRS budget by $80 billion. And the Secretary of Treasury wants to hire, with that money, an army of IRS agents. Now, why do they want to do this? Well, because they want to squeeze more dollars out of hardworking taxpayers in order to pay for their reckless $3.5 trillion tax and spending proposal.
How it is that $600 transactions flows could literally help us find folks who are millionaires and billionaires cheating on their taxes. 3 letters no American household wants to see in their mailboxes. IRS. It sends shivers down the spine. So for those Americans who are concerned that somehow the government is too big, too onerous, too burdensome, this only adds more fuel to that fire.
I've heard from bankers, community bankers and credit union presidents who are concerned about this. But I have literally heard from thousands of North Dakotans who bank with great concern. And in many cases, it's a phone call from somebody who just wants to know if it's true. And if it's true, do I know about it? This proposal is built on a premise that there are a bunch of guilty people out there. There's a presumption of guilt. Billionaires just aren't paying their fair share. So we have to get all of the transaction information from everybody because they're not paying their fair share. This proposal doesn't even accomplish what they claim they want to accomplish by the proposal. So what is the real motive? They've always been about incremental steps toward socialism, and now they've decided to take a great big leap while they can hold all 3 levers of power in this town.
And I think that a better approach to this, instead of saying, well, we'll increase the thresholds, is for that. If they say we're just going to audit billionaires, then why don't they just say we'll only audit billionaires? That keeps us from having to argue all these points.